Hello and welcome to season 6, episode 9 of Dualistic Unity. I am not sure of anything. Someone asked me something. I don't know. I have some thoughts, maybe some considerations, some things to say about it, but there's a lot of my life where I wanted to know, and I'd far rather not know. It's a lot more exciting to me than knowing and being sure, because all of a sudden then I have stakes in the ground and I have something to defend and something to hold on to, and a lot of weight that comes with being sure of something. It's a lot lighter to be willing to not know and be very, very cool with that.
Not just cool with that, but curious as fuck about what's going to happen. That's why I jump into things, quite frankly, is because I'm fucking curious as to what I'm going to do. I don't know. That's the point. I don't know. And so the tone of I don't know has changed over time. At one point, it was I don't know. And there was worry and trepidation. Now it's I don't know. And there's some excitement and curiosity there. And that's the whole point. I don't know. I didn't know what I was going to say here. I don't know what I'm going to say after. I don't know what I'm going to say tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. What I do know is that I have made it this far and have really no reason to think that I'm not going to continue to do that. And so I'm curious. And that's good enough for me. I'm going to step forward out of curiosity because I am life unfolding. And the story is a lot of fun when you don't get all wrapped up in what it means about you.
And with all that said, I hope you enjoy this live stream. That is, oh no, that is not what it is. What do I even? I don't even say
I don't
anything.
even think we do anything. Actually, here,
Enjoy
I'll
the
add something to
episode.
it. Hold up. And normally it would be here that Andrew would say something because we would be leading into a live stream. And this one actually is a live stream, which is something I wanted to mention because we want to engage more with the audience. We've been busy with retreats. We've been busy trying to survive. We've been busy trying to get the podcast going. That's all happening. The community has grown. People are here. They are participating. They're talking to one another. We have Amanda and Jackie who are creating new episodes all the time with totally different perspectives. We want to hear from you. So join us on our Patreon page, on our Discord channel. Leave a comment on Instagram. Leave a comment in the YouTube section. Ask your questions, share your insights, and we will do our best to include those in the episodes that are upcoming because this year is going to be incredibly exciting for Dualistic Unity, and you are a part of Dualistic Unity. And with all that said, enjoy the episode. So, we're going to kick this conversation off on a controversial subject, or let's just say a conversation that has often gotten me into hot water: love. What does love have to do with it? What is the point? What is love, in fact, and how is it expressed? This is a question that was submitted by Jay on Patreon. How's it going, buddy? Thank you so much for participating. We really appreciate you submitting that question. It was, and I'll repeat, what does love mean to you, and how is that expressed in your experience? And I am so very, very careful around this concept, around this question, because any answer that you reach for is going to be conceptual. It's going to be cherry picked. It's going to be pleasant. It's going to be lovely. It's going to be something that feels real good. And that is the hallmark of every really good trap. It just gets your attention. You really want it. You really like it. You think your life's going to be better off with it. I think that often we focus on the word love instead of how love is often expressed, which is through strength very often and through self-sacrifice. The ability to not put yourself first, to actually look at the whole picture. But that's not what we usually mean by love. What we usually mean by love is an emotion or sometimes an action between two people. I love this person. I feel this specific way about them. And I don't think that has anything to do with love. I think that's romantic love in the way that you would see at a gift card store, the Hallmark kind of love, the kind of love that is reflected in you buying somebody a flower. I don't necessarily consider that love. I consider that to be appreciation, even desire. There can be some lust in there. There's a lot of attraction, that kind of thing. With the flower thing, a certain degree of ceremony, but obviously you're just trying to show them that you care about them, often, not necessarily all the time. And so, I mean, the idea of love gets really confusing in that case, because you're looking for a specific way of feeling about people. And I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think love is what remains. I think love is very much like reality. It's what is expressed when we are not in the way. That love is what we are when we are just being ourselves. Because when you feel love, what does that feel like? It feels like being vulnerable. It feels like being authentic. It feels like being connected. It feels like being yourself, which again is very different than infatuation or desire, which people often mistake for love. And this is the reason that I avoid this word very often. You know, it's funny because when I was a kid, my grandfather very rarely said, "I love you," but he showed it in everything he did. And that's very much the point. How often do you hear the words, but it's not reflected in the actions? The person will say, "I love you," but put themselves first. Will say, "I love you," but still give in to their fears and disregard yours. And so I would say that love is what remains when we are willing to let go of control. I don't think that love and control can exist at the same time. Or rather, I don't believe that you can just be loving and still have control. Because what do you need the control for outside of fear? And if love is a reflection, or rather, and if love is a reaction to your fear, then that's not really love either. So I think it's a complicated question.
Well, fucking said, dude. And it makes me wonder if, say, for example, hypothetically, like, because as you said, love is always going to be conceptual or it's what's left. So, what if love didn't exist? Like, we didn't even have conversations about what love is. It was like that was almost like removed from the equation of our society right now. Because what you'd be left with is just the interaction. It's just the moment to moment interaction, and something like, giving someone a flower, it's like a loving gesture, would be seen as something a little bit more to it. It's like, is this just a gesture, or is this coming with an expectation? Is this a feeling of a transactional sort of feeling? Because you get a sense of things being more transactional. It's like when the love layer distraction doesn't exist, you see oftentimes behaviors that are pitched as loving as being a little bit more manipulative, potentially, or with a degree of expectation, or like when that love sort of layer is cut, you see things more so for what they are. It's almost like love in a lot of ways is just a comfortable distraction from what's like actually happening right there. And because we're so bought in, like, to love being a thing, or like loving someone, like being in love with someone, like, oh, falling madly in love with someone is kind of just like, it's kind of just becoming obsessed with an idea, oftentimes because of what you're getting out of it. It's like, because, I'm obsessed with this person because it makes me look like I have more value, or I, enjoy what they have to offer me. And it's a lot of times that infatuation, like the obsessive sort of infatuation, that isn't really so much of a moment to moment experience. And so as long as it is, more of this conceptual idea of love, it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing in a sense, or it allows for it in a lot more ways because it's such a thing, and it's kind of just like representative of feeling good. Like feeling good, like you wouldn't really oftentimes feel like, oh, this person made me feel bad, so they don't love me. This person made me feel good, so they do love me. And that's like our bar, which is a really fucked up bar, because like, who is that person doing it for? Like, are they doing it for you? Or would being more honest with you be more so for you? Or is it for themselves not wanting to feel uncomfortable? And so like, we have phrases like tough love, but it's funny how it's like love and then tough love, as opposed to them being like equal components of the same spectrum. Like it's just, yeah, exactly. It's just love. It's not like easy love and tough love. But if we put it like that, then that kind of shifts the perspective a little bit. Instead of it being love and tough love, it's like easy love and tough love. It's like that was easy for you to do that thing, like, that's the easy stuff because that makes you feel good too. And you probably get something out of it because you're being semi, manipulative in the experience. To even just fucking telling someone you love them is like, in a sense, like being able to do something that is bypassing the actions that you're taking. It's like, oh, I just, it's like apologizing or fucking going to confession, right? It's like, oh, as long as you confess, you're good. As long as you just say that you love me, no matter what the fuck your actions are, then it's like, you love me. It's like, it's the worst indicator of it, the saying of it. The best indicator is the actions, which oftentimes people don't consider within that realm. It's just like yeah, again, it's conceptual entirely.
Absolutely. And what's worse about it is that we start to think that if we act in ways that we can have conceptualized as loving, that that is the same as being loving. And so what you have is this tendency to do things for someone from a certain state of mind in the name of loving them. But then if they don't recognize it or live up to your expectations or reciprocate, all of a sudden you're angry. You're like, well, they're not doing any of that back. It's like, hold up. Was it love if you were doing it with the expectation of reciprocity? Was it love if you were doing it with any expectation at all? Which leads us to our next question, which came from another Patreon supporter. Shout out to Ben. Appreciate the submission, man. Let me just read this so I know I've got it correct. Can healthy expectations exist? I'm just going to lob this one over to Andrew and see what he's got up his sleeve.
I did see that notification pop up on my phone as a comment to that post, and I sat on it for a second. I was like, I'm not gonna think about this until we get to the episode. But oh man, like I don't think so in the sense of what I want. Like you've said in the past, like the only expectation I have of people is to to be themselves or something along those lines, or do what's best for them, right? That's the expectation, was like to do for them, to do what's best to them. And so any deviation of that, because when you put it like that, it's like, how could you possibly expect anyone to act differently until they, stop taking themselves quite so seriously? But that's not because, like, you're not doing that. You're not in control of that. Like, you expecting them to act differently than what's in the best interest of them versus, for the best interest of more than just them self separate from everything else. That's, to have a healthy expectation is almost like thinking that you have some control over what they do, and immediately you're reaching, and then there's going to be blowback because every time you reach, there's inevitable blowback. And so I guess, like, you can if you want, but it's no different than just having any sort of, like, any expectation is expectation aside from them, and them doing what's in their best interest is just them doing what they're doing. Like, it's just kind of what they're always doing anyway, so you're not really expecting, but it's there's the awareness of it that that's where most people are at, so you're never caught off guard. Because if you think, if you're expecting something else, some idea in your own head, it's just, a very limited perspective, usually based on what's gonna hinder them from doing something that makes you feel bad almost, and you're trying to buffer that by thinking they're going to act in a certain way, but then having no control over it anyway. So it's just like, I hope that happens with no idea. And then if it does or doesn't, like, is out of your control. So then it begs the question, like, why have them to begin with, because they're just going to be a distraction from actually paying attention in the moment. And so it's actually going to get in your way more to have those, personal expectations.
This is one that I've wrestled with for a long time, because it's tricky. As you, I guess, get out of the way more, you start to see more. And so you start to see patterns in people. Like, you start to see the choices that we often make, because you're not so caught up in your own shit. So you're just like, I know I do that. And you see it more often in other people. And so you get to the point where you're just like, oh, I see where they're at. Oh, I know what's coming next, right? But you don't. And that's the whole point. It becomes, it kind of becomes a fun game, because you get really good at probabilities, right? But on the other hand, if you get cocky about it, everything goes to shit, because then you start to actually think about yourself more, and that's what throws off your awareness to begin with. Isn't that fun, right? Because all of a sudden you're like, aha, I'm getting this. And every time you do that, you're getting farther and farther away from the state of mind that was actually cluing into the patterns to begin with. And that state of mind doesn't assume anything, which is why it's more aware. And so, do expectation can you do healthy expectations exist? I would ask what you mean by healthy. Do you mean, can you have them and feel good about them and rely on them at any given point? I would say no. And this is just in my experience. By all means, like, and again, every once in a while I'll be like, oh yeah, I can see this coming, but I always follow it up with, but I don't know. And I do that for my own benefit. I do that as something that I have recognized in my life, that it is better to just admit, just guessing, at best, it's just a guess, than to actually put any stake in this idea that I'm right, that I can see what's going to happen, that I have perfect memory, as it were, as they were saying in Dune for Paul Atreides. He was the man who's many places at once. He has perfect recollection of the future, which is why that book Dune by Frank Herbert is just incredible, right? Because they're talking about the birth of a human being with perfect recollection of the future, because he's simultaneously everywhere at the same time, awareness of all points of space, all possible lives at the same time. And so he's in line with the flow as it's happening through him. Damn good story. Which is why he says, I am, what is it? I am the master of fate and the tool of fate.
Almost just being able to be used by yourself but actually used. Like, we talked about this a while ago, that, like, how much I'm trying to be myself in a sense, and how much is in the way of doing that. And all these experiences are like, bits and layers of concrete over it. And the more you're just like willing to be yourself, the more that concrete starts to break down. And then you're free in the sense of being able to have, like, I don't know if it's like the influence you want to have, or just there isn't, so much of the hesitation and the fear and the things that come up. But then makes me wonder, like, you can have all that and still do it anyway. Like, the fear doesn't have to be the wall. And so it's not about getting rid of the fear. It's just, doing it despite, and how seriously you're taking yourself kind of makes that more or less difficult, basically. But yeah, I don't even know if that had to do. I'm trying to think of like what the initial question was, but I have another
It was
one.
about healthy expectations. But that's the nice thing about these episodes, is that the question isn't necessarily, I guess, requiring an answer. We're not offering an answer. What we're asking is, where would you like us to kick off this train ride? And that's pretty much it, because the question is like a doorway down a path that you may not have taken. And this is something that I've actually said to people previously when they've experimented with psychedelics. Here's a question for you to ask. If you weren't here Would anything else be? And that question opens doors that most people don't go down, ever. They never ask themselves, okay, if I wasn't here, would anything else be? Because do you know? Do you know? You don't know. You don't know. But it makes you immediately go, okay, then what the hell am I? Because you start thinking about reality as an extension of your subjective experience. You start thinking of reality as your awareness suddenly, and it changes the scope of where you're going in your mind. And that's why questions are so much fun. The problem that we do, or the problem that we have, is that we try to get to answers instead of just recognizing what we're doing. We're going through doorways. We're going into new territories. This is the beautiful part about asking questions, is that you're exploring the mind, you're exploring possibilities, you're exploring perceptions, you're exploring existence just by daring to ask. And so this show isn't necessarily a Q&A. And as we've said previously, we actually have an episode, I believe, called Cues, because it's all about the question. And that's what this is. It's all about the question.
Yeah, I haven't asked myself that one in a while, and that just hit a little different for sure. Because it immediately is like observer observed is same thing, but and there's oh man, as I say it, it's like, it'll be clear for a moment, and then it's all these ideas start coming back, like making sense of what's happening right now. Because otherwise, like it doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't right now make sense until I start telling myself. And that's, we've talked about just like how the past is reflective of a way for us to make sense of this that I'm experiencing right now. And we just take that so seriously that then we like flip it over and like, oh, I can have all of this stuff, and this definitely meant all of that. And so therefore, if this happens, it's going to mean this. And like, it's a complete lack of control of any of it the entire time. And yet, and it's just like something to do kind of, but also like semi necessary and required. But that's, yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of all of this and everything, is it can just be like life can be a free flow, but we have all of these reasons why it can't, because there's all these stops where it's like, well, yeah, I can't do this, can't do that, gotta do this, gotta do that. And there, all of that just gets built into this fucking like crazy ass maze that doesn't really exist. Like I'm making for myself always, because there's things that'll happen that don't have the response that I have in myself to it. And you start to realize like, oh fuck, all this shit that I'm like worried about is like it starts and ends with me. And I'm having this experience that's informing these things and these ideas and these stories, but it still starts and ends with me. And so if I wasn't here, no, nothing, but I don't know. To me, it wouldn't. And what would that even be, not being here? When am I not here? When I'm dreaming. That's some trippy ass dreams recently. I'm here. When I'm so like it's like, oh, but when you're asleep, you're not. I am. You can check my bed. I'm lying there and I'm having dreams. So like, am I ever not? I don't know what death is like. I can't explain. I know that it's the only thing that I know is that I've always been here. So anyway, we can keep running with this. I have a question
Oh,
here, but
I love all of this. It again, like I went to the forest with that question, right? That was the question that changed my life. Like all of a sudden, because again, when I woke up, it was, oh my God, I've never lived for me. I've never lived for me. And everything in my life suddenly reflected like, oh my God, I've never made choices solely for me. I've always made it relative to where I fit in everybody else's life. And then it kept going until I was like, oh, wait a minute. All I know is me. Oh, wait a minute. And everything changed all at once. And it's because it's a totally different way of looking at things. Because if you look at that, what you're asking is very much, are you reality? And so in that mindset, questions about death change. Can you die? Can reality die? Is there a non-existence? And what do you mean by you? If I wasn't here, would anything else be? What do I mean by me? Because if I'm reality, that includes you. That includes everything. So all of a sudden I'm like, hold on. So that means I have to question my idea of myself too, because it's obviously invalid with this new question. Everything changes. And it becomes way, way more awe-inspiring. This is what lights you up, where you're just like, hold up, I've got lots of questions. And the best part about it is that they're your questions, and you're the only one who gets to explore them. Just don't answer them. At best, go, that's what I know so far, or at least that's what I've come up to date. That's the best I've got. But don't, it's like I was saying earlier, don't get cocky. Don't start thinking because that just cuts you off. It actually takes you away from the glory of just all of this shit. It's amazing. We do have a question, but you have a question, you said, so you go first.
And it kind of like starts to feel like you're just like wafting through yourself in a lot of ways. Like, oh, that's really cool. I can say something to that thing, and they say something back. Like I had that thought when I was like a couple months or a year ago. Like I said something to my brother, and he responded, and it was like a ridiculous thing, and he kind of like gave me an eyebrow. He's like, "Dude, are you high right now?" And I was like, "Maybe a little bit," but like I had no I had no idea what he would respond. I had an idea based on interactions of how he may respond given that, and I have an idea of like the range, but no idea whatsoever. And so that's like it's kind of cool. And then you're like, oh wow. So if I am just moving, interacting through myself, and it's funny because like we've talked about this plenty of times, and like it's interesting. I don't know what like the last year was. I don't know. Maybe we have talked about it more, but like I can remember the feeling of talking about it now, and there was just even just early on in the podcast, like so much less context of things, awareness, sensitivity to things, and it's like we're kind of starting like I feel like we're talking about it again after a while. And like yeah, it's like and it's fucked because when you're feeling like a little bit more clear, like how the fuck do I get all caught? But I have so much more of an appreciation for, being caught, which like as I'm talking, I'm like, yeah, it doesn't change anything, but it's just the tensing and the lack of relaxation makes less sense as you go. Like it's like, yeah, no, I wouldn't, yeah, no, but like you almost got to feel all that stuff, and that's why it's so uncomfortable going through shifts in yourself or perspectives. But I'm like gonna start getting emotional here or something, but it's interesting. Just yeah. Oh man. I don't have anything else to say right now.
That is totally fair. I just wanted to say that we've talked about this before, but we always come at it from wherever we're at the time, right? Like these conversations come up, but people try to stay here. And you'll notice that I don't really give a fuck about staying here. And I say that as much as I love this conversation, I really do, about being awareness and all of that fun stuff. And it goes real deep. And I'm sure we'll get back into this as we go. But it's so important that you recognize that that's all conceptual shit. Like even right now, like this is all fun. We're having little moments of insight, but then after the fact, we're conceptualizing the fuck out of it. And we're going to go back into the world of our own shit, thinking that we're oh so intelligent. Look how clever I am. Oh my God. And then, oh, I'm thinking about myself. Oh my God. And then we'll come back out the other end and we'll have other moments of this is going, wow, this is amazing. But that's what this is. That's what it's meant to be. Is there's nothing wrong with any of that. It's just that we've kind of lost an appreciation for what this is. Right? We look at suffering and pain and we go, no, that shouldn't be. This is why, and I get these pamphlets all the time, or they're out on the street offering to hand them out, and I'm like, thank you. Just the Watchtower, or Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or born again Christians or any of those. And the pamphlet is always, and I love how they pound on this. If there's suffering in the world, how can there be a God? And that's their opening. And it's like, okay. And then they start talking about the devil and shit. You're like, whoa, wait. I think you might have missed the point. The suffering leads to the joy, right? The joy leads to the suffering. But as long as you're looking at it as one side versus the other, you can't see how they work together. And so all of a sudden, reality makes no fucking sense. Why am I being punished? I'm being rewarded now. It makes no sense until you start realizing, okay, no, the two work hand in hand. And then when you tie in that other factor that you're it, then all of a sudden you start to realize that you're watching your own oscillating existence, right? And all of this starts to take on a totally different tone. But that said, you had a question.
Yes, I did. I have other stuff to say. I'm like, nope, we're just going to keep rolling with this shit because this is fun too. And this kind of ties, I have some thoughts actually that, all right. Anyway, do you have any other podcast recs outside of DU, which is obviously the best? You're not wrong there, sister. But I would say anything you're interested in right now, like gardening. You're interested in gardening? Listen to a gardening podcast. Do you want to get into whittling or shoemaking? Like a shoemaking podcast. I'm saying this from kind of just the realization of how much, as you were just saying, like for me, turn the conversation into like my thing. Like I very much thought of it as something as opposed to just talking about reality. It was like something I think I'm good at or like can do better than someone else in a sense. And like that's not what it's all about. Like so much of it just comes down to a willingness to be yourself without so much hesitation. And so, listening to podcasts, like you can very much get focused on, like spirit. And I'm not saying like our podcast is spiritual necessarily, but like when we get into the deeper stuff, it's like people will think of it in a certain way, which isn't it. And I think that's what's I'm starting to get a sense of more and more myself is like, no, everything's fucking on the table. Like it's fun to get in, as you're saying, to that conversation, but it's like in and out. It's like, oh yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Now what was that other thing you wanted to talk about? What's going on? Yeah. And then it's like the conversation, but that's not like you can think of that or understanding more, letting go more and more of yourself as like the thing. It's like this is the thing that I build another identity around. Like we can see that in a lot of different ways. And so just when I podcast recs, book recommendations, it's like, yeah, something you're interested in. If you want to dig in and learn something about something, like go for it. Enjoy it.
That's a really good answer. I don't have any specific podcast recommendations because, as I've said numerous times, I don't really listen to podcasts or read books or watch TV anymore. I watch movies for sure because we do movie reviews. But aside from that, I'm living my life. As much and as Andrew was just saying, these conversations are great, but it's just as important to go and do the dishes. So that said, I would say if I had any advice for recommendations as a whole, whether it's podcasts or books or speakers or music or anything like that, try anything, check it out, but listen for certain things and definitely be careful for this idea that it's making your life better. So if there's an underlying tone of, you're better for listening to this, and you have to, if you identify in a certain way, this is going to improve your life, and if you look at yourself in a certain way, if you double down on certain thoughts, blah blah blah, just watch for all that stuff, right? And if you're listening for it in yourself, then you're listening for it in other people, in which case check out whatever you want, have some faith in yourself. I'm sure you're going to find something that you enjoy. Just don't get attached. As always, this is something that we tell the listeners of the Dualistic Unity community. We love that you listen to the podcast. Thank you very much. We really do appreciate it, but never, ever assume that the podcast is going to explain anything better than you will in the moment that you're having that conversation. Right? Everything's a resource. Everyone is a resource. Everyone is teaching you. Everyone is an opportunity to learn. Everyone is a ripple. Everyone is you. And so that means all of your experiences are an opportunity. And I'll tell you that right now, like if I were to go and look for a podcast to listen to, I'd probably bounce from one to the other for a little bit and go, aha, I'm digging this one. Now, can I tell you how that process is going to go? No. Can I tell you which ones you're going to bounce around through? Nope. Can I tell you you're going to find one that resonates? Yep. Because you're looking, right? And that's really it. Have faith in yourself. Look, get involved. Just don't get attached.
Well said. Yeah, it's like I don't know how it's going to happen, but if you keep going, it's going to happen. Like we can't tell you, but based on historical evidence, time and attention seems to be your best bet when doing anything. And you combine those, and things happen, and you keep trying things, but there's no way to guarantee how quickly, how well, how much. But they then are levers too. You like time and attention. Like the more attention, how much can you decrease the time? And attention being wholehearted attention on this, not for you getting to a spot, because that's then split attention. That's not really attention. And so it's not doing it to decrease the time, even. It's like that plays out naturally, and you might start, the time might start feeling different the more attention you're paying to things as you go. But yeah.
Which brings us to an excellent question. This is from the comments section. I'll throw it up on the screen. What are your thoughts on déjà rev? For example, how it impacts our experience as a consciousness or awareness. Now, I don't know what déjà rev is, so I went and looked it up, and it's very much like déjà vu. So, déjà rev is a French phrase that translates to already dreamed. It can actually encompass a few specific experiences, which we'll touch on later, but generally speaking, it describes the sensation of feeling like you dreamed about something before it happened in real life. So it is very much déjà vu. Just having the experience, you're like, I've been here. I've done this. Now, I always find that fascinating because it's happened a number of times in my life, but I've noticed that it stopped happening when I started lucid dreaming. I stopped having as many moments of déjà vu as I started having more lucid dreams, which seems very odd to me, but I'm exactly. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to pass it over to Andrew because I'm very curious about his thoughts on the experience of déjà vu and how it impacts our lives.
Yeah, I have a number of thoughts. I mean, a number of thoughts. First of all, like with lucid dreaming versus not, like, and then digging into, just like the reality of eternity, and you not being a separate individual with a specific number of experiences. It's like, quote unquote, deep down right now, you're all experiences that have ever been and like ever will be. And that's the reality of what's going on. As much as I feel like, oh no, that couldn't possibly be. I'm this, I'm separate. I haven't had those experiences. How could I have memories of things or recollections of things? Because it's like our memory bank. I don't know, like the hippocampus. I don't really know much about what goes on in the inner workings of memory and whatnot, but like the sense of having been somewhere before, it's like in infinite variations, like you've been everywhere in similar points. And it makes me wonder if those, like the feeling of deja vu, could be almost like a subtle nudge or something. And then the less you believe this to be always what you think, or the more willing you are to, be relaxed or let go, it stops happening as much. And I guess this one's specific to dreaming. I was kind of thinking of deja vu, but regardless, when it comes to dreaming, like in a dream, if you're not, the more you're paying attention in a dream, probably a higher likelihood you're going to be able to lucid dream, because you'll be aware of what's going on. Like I had a dream last night that was very, very vivid, but I wouldn't say it was lucid necessarily, but I was like, I remember a lot of it, like throughout, like details. And like there were things that definitely didn't make sense. Like a street that I was on growing up was like covered in grass, and it was all grass. And I was like, oh, interesting. Why would they, cover the street with grass? But so anyway, as that perspective shifts and as you're paying more attention to dreams, it would make sense then that it wouldn't be playing out like something else was happening. Honestly, I don't really know where I'm going with this anymore. So those were
Totally
some
fair,
thoughts, and I'm
because
gonna stop.
I did some further reading. Okay, so deja rev is not quite deja vu, because deja vu, you're like, I've seen this before. Deja rev has three different types. Episodic, like deja rev, where the patient is spontaneously able to remember or specify that he or she had this very specific dream on a very specific date. So in other words, you're like, oh shit, I had this dream on Thursday. It's total recall of the dream at a specific time. Familiarity, like deja rev, where this is reminiscence of elements the patient thinks he or she has seen in a dream, but is not able to relate to a specific dream or date. So, in other words, kind of have a feeling that you remember the dream. And then dreamy state, deja rev. This is cool. This patient describes a feeling of being like in a dream, reminding him or her of a sensation similar to night dreaming. So, in other words, it feels like you're dreaming now. Now, that's an experience you've actually had recently. All of these are kind of experiences that you've had. And it makes a lot of sense, because it really depends on how clear you are in your dream, right? And how relaxed you are here, which is both the same spectrum, right? Because the more relaxed you are in your dream, you tend to be more clear, right? Like I find dreams to be chaotic and really hard to remember when I'm stressed. When I'm stressed out, my dreams reflect that. When I go to bed and I just put my head on the pillow and I'm out, I go straight into my dreams, and they're typically pretty easy to remember. They're typically pretty easy to be aware in, right? Because I'm not fighting them. Mind you, on the other hand, and this kind of goes back to the deja vu question, because I was thinking about this. I'm like, why don't I have those moments? It's not that I don't have those moments. It's that I don't respond to them anymore. Because I had so many moments where I'm like, shit, I've been here before. And it was really jarring for me at one point. And then after a certain point, I'm like, well, of course I have. And I just stopped responding to it.
And so it's almost like the experience of there being reality and dreams require there to be a reality and something that's real, despite us kind of knowing that like this isn't what we think ever. And so there's the disparity, but like who's to say that isn't, it isn't always just a dream in a sense? Because like what is the difference when you think about dreaming? It's like an experience that there isn't. It's like when you think of, oh, it was just a dream. Like when you wake up in the morning, oh, it's just a dream. It wasn't that. Like, what is the difference between that and this is like how seriously you take kind of like a component of this, like a component of this, how seriously you take the situations. And so as you start taking things less seriously, like you start and big part being yourself, like because that's the root of your experience at all times. So like as you start taking yourself less seriously, the situations get a little bit less serious. And like seriousness is interesting too, because like serious acts are done, like seriously dangerous acts are typically done by people who take themselves very seriously. And when you think about serious, like, oh, this is serious right now. We gotta lock in, like we're on the run to find a serial killer or something. That's a serious situation, but it's in response to, people taking themselves very seriously, or things that have happen to them, or situations, or whatever, and then their opinion, their perspective, their assumptions very seriously as well, to the point that it does make sense. Like everything that everyone does all the time, like no matter what they're doing, makes sense to them in the moment. And so the seriousness, like the back and forth, like how much as we all stop taking ourselves so seriously, there aren't so many of those like serious situations in the form of, you know, like suffering, murder, death, etc. And like they're all kind of expressions of like how goddamn seriously we're taking ourselves, how seriously we're taking and like, so the reflection of this. So anyway, that's kind of getting away from the deja reve, but
I don't know necessarily if it is, because I love the fact that this conversation keeps circling back to this, because if you weren't there to dream it, would the dream exist? It's exactly the same question. It's exactly the same question in regards to your existence and your fundamental role as awareness. It's just on a smaller scale that you can accept as created by you. I did notice something just now. Never looked it up before. Isn't that really funny? I looked up the etymology of serious. And before, it was considered to be something that was grave, something that was earnest, something that you needed to pay attention to. It actually meant in series, something that was continuous, one step after another. And so that's really funny, because that's exactly what we're doing when we're taking ourselves seriously, is we're looking at the chronology of our timeline. We're looking at the series of events, and that's what's freaking us out. Isn't that fucking hilarious?
holy fucking shit, dude. Oh my god. I was like, I feel like whatever's gonna come right now is gonna be kind of trippy as fuck. Cause that, like, how often will a word like that, like believe that we had, like, to care for, right? That was the etymology of believe, but like serious coming from series. And because when I said serial killer being like a serious act, I recognize like Siri, serious, series, serial, like in series over and over and over. And so, how much is our ability to perceive ourselves? Does it require series like past, present, future? Like those are expressions of us taking ourselves seriously, taking things seriously, being serious about things that stem from control. Because you think like this happened, this is now happening as a response to that. So therefore, based on what's happening now, I can know, you know, when you're like, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. And someone's like, well, I'm pretty sure I know what's going to happen in 5 seconds. I'm going to be sitting right here and I'm going to be saying the things that I'm saying. And like, that's typically the response, but it's discounting the fact that you don't really know. But as we maintain that idea of control and that as that spans out, it's like, oh, as long as I fucking act well, I'm by the end of my life, extended out, you know, decades, I'm going to go to heaven. It's like I have that degree of control and how extended out we are. It's like, holy fuck. But the series, like series, as opposed to one moment, this here now, that's like the uh antithesis. Like, you know, being here now and being in a series is like an oxymoron in a sense. Like they can't like, so series, fuck, serious, serial. Oh shit, man.
Oh, I got another one for you. Check this out. Control originally was to check the accuracy of, to verify, and to regulate. So isn't that exactly what we're doing? Is we're trying to get an idea of what we are and who we are and what our value is and where we are. And that's it. We're always checking on the accuracy of our thoughts, of our assumptions. That's control. Isn't that interesting? It's this ongoing thing where we're checking. Do I have it? Do I have it? Do I know?
Oh, it's straight up just, do I know? Can I know this? And it's, of course you can't, but that's fucked. Oh my god, that like control and knowing, like knowledge of good and evil. The tree of knowledge, tree of control. Oh man.
But this is the funny part, is that all of those words like believe, control, serious, all of the etymologies I'm looking up were before the 15th century, because we didn't speak English like this for a very long time. Like if you go farther and farther back, our language changes dramatically. If you were to listen to somebody speaking in the time of Jesus, you wouldn't understand anything they're saying. right? Even if you were to go back to the original English language, you wouldn't understand a word they're saying because everything has changed, but so has the meanings. Why have the meanings changed? Because our mentality has changed. So, isn't it possible that our earlier languages were actually trying to communicate an entirely different relationship with reality? And that the words themselves have changed as our perception of ourself within the universe, within reality itself, has changed.
It's almost more of a constant buffer. Like the language we used was more reminders of things, of like the reality of what we're doing when we feel like we're in control, when we are being serious about something. And like they all go hand in hand. And so the etymology, understanding that, would make way more sense to mitigate that. And so as because with our, with current mentality right now, a lot of it is just like not looking, like cognitive dissonance, like just avoiding, just not paying attention to certain things that question my control, my certainty, my feeling sense of knowing something. Because in order to know something, it has to discount other perspectives. Like, no, I know this. But there could be a perspective that isn't that. Like, I know that I'm the most amazing person in the world, but someone could have the perspective of you're the biggest piece of shit in the world. And so you don't know that. You never actually know that. And I said something like a couple seconds ago, and I don't even remember what it was, but how much a reality is just an expression of us. Like, and so, yeah, as we're going through and like trying to maintain then this thing that we kind of like have now mistranslated, there was like a process of losing touch with the reality of it that went hand in hand with our mentality, which went hand in hand with our feeling like we can control, like we can have control. And there's been a number of things even the last, couple hundred years that have reinforced this illusion of control. And now we're getting to a point where we feel like we can control the weather, and like we can, in a sense of like being able to manipulate it, but it's still not that control. Like we still don't, because there's always secondary and tertiary repercussions always. So it's not, nothing exists in a vacuum, nothing exists in silo. And the expectation of control, of being able to control something, kind of implies that no, I can get this to happen with no ramifications whatsoever. And as you have tunnel vision, you don't recognize that of course everything that you're doing has ramifications, but that includes the things that you think you're doing wrong. And you don't recognize the impacts of that, whether right or wrong. There's impacts on both sides no matter what. So it's not even about trying to maintain yourself in the sense that you keep doing it, because like you don't even know the impacts of any of it ever. So the best you got is just to continue to pay attention and at least take in as many considerations as is, viable for the moment. And just, yeah, which there's going to be more with paying attention and just continuing to go through, but not try again. Like you get too far with that and you try and you think of it as doing the right thing as opposed to just being. And that's why sometimes it's so tricky. It's like, well, what do I do? Just, there isn't anything to do. Just keep paying attention, and things have a way of unfolding.
Yeah, because what happens when you pay attention? You start to realize you don't know. That's, I think, the most important thing about all of this. As we get older, we start to recognize how little we do know and how much we just assume. Like, there is no period of our life where we assume we know more than our teenage years. Well, why is that? Because we're trying to fit in with the rest of the world around us, where everybody else is pretending that they know as well. But all they've done is fall into a comfortable groove where what they know because it's familiar. And so we just fall into those comfortable grooves where, again, we're in Plato's cave. But as we get older, as we start to pay attention, the first thing we really pick up on is the fact that we're basically still children. This is something that people have said to me often as they get into their mid-20s and they start having conversations about life and the universe and their existence and all that. They're like, oh my God, I feel like I'm just a kid again. It's like, yeah, because you blew yourself up as an adult, right? That's the only reason that you feel like you're a kid again, is that you were playing make-believe that you were an adult because you have a job and you make money and you can drive a car. And all that did was cut you off from continuing to look at reality and marveling at it in the same way a child does. Because when we say child, we look at that in almost a derogatory way. Like, oh, you're acting like a child. It's like, children are paying attention. Children are vulnerable. Children are empathetic. Children laugh. Children have all of the qualities that we're looking for in our lives. And yet, when somebody is acting kind of goofy, we're like, oh, they're so childish. Yeah, normally it's bothering you because you're not. But that's really the point, is just to allow yourself to be. And as you relax and you pay attention and you start to recognize you don't need to always know, you don't always need to be perceived as the person who knows everything, who's in control, who has life figured out. And that's really the danger, isn't it? All right, trying to see yourself that way or trying to get other people to see you that way. When you let go of that, well, then you start to realize where you were making assumptions, where you were hurting people, where you were doing things that had a ripple or an outcome that you didn't want to see and thus couldn't see, right? And you start to become more aware of life and you recognize how little you knew. And that's what causes you to walk a little bit more cautiously through reality, causes you to slow down and pay attention. And in that state of paying attention, you have an opportunity for an insight, more insights, over and over and over again. But it doesn't happen until you stop holding on to this control, this idea that you can know. Do I still know? Am I right? Are these people threatening me? Just take in the information. Stop defining yourself by it. All of a sudden somebody tells you something new. You're like, aha, there you go. I didn't know. Now I know. Or at least now I think I know. Something. I've learned something new is what I'm saying. So this has been a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying this episode. I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody who's joined us in the live stream. Thank you so very much. We really appreciate you being here. Somebody had brought up the word sin, the etymology of which I had brought up as saying to miss the mark. Oops, I made a mistake. And they looked and they were trying to find the etymology of sin. Of course, this comes from the Greek translation of the original Bible, because the original Bible was not in English. They didn't use the word sin. And so if you want to go back to their definition of sin, it also means something very different, but that would be the Hebrew etymology. And you are welcome to check that out as well. But the point is, the closest they could get from the Hebrew to the Greek was oops, which is really all a sin is. And that is the importance of being able to look at words that we use all the time and to recognize that they don't necessarily mean what we think they mean. And they didn't always mean what we think they mean. And thus it's important to go back to where they come from, which is the experience of reality. And in the experience of reality, all of a sudden it becomes fucking obvious what words like serious and control mean.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, and we're unwilling to look at those words or even recognize or just conceptualize something that just needs context. Like, all language, like, there can never be adequate answers that are given, because there's always more context. Like, and context is a requirement. So for an answer to be the case, it has to exist, you know, kind of separate from everything else. But take sin, for example, because we both grew up religious, learning the right things to do and the wrong things to do. Zero fucking context whatsoever with any of the sins. It's like no context whatsoever. Even imagining someone like naked in your head. It's like the thought that you have control over that. And the idea, it's like, what if I didn't want to see someone naked in my head? Like, too bad. Better make it to confession quick before you get hit by a bus, or else you're gonna burn forever. Well, that one would just send you to purgatory. That wouldn't technically be a mortal sin, but then you get there, and
That's a good subject. We should talk about this because this is something that I recognized recently on TikTok. Somebody had made a video about this, and I wanted to address it quickly. The video, and it comes from a place of genuine, concern, but that concern only comes from a place of trying to define yourself. The video was of somebody saying, "Hey, if you're having homosexual thoughts, then just do some exercise until they go away." And obviously this is coming from a place where it's like, I don't like these thoughts. We got to make them go away because they could mean something about me. Now, this could mean a number of things. It could mean that, in fact, the person is attracted to men, which is fine. That doesn't necessarily make you gay. It could also mean that you just have an awareness, that you have a brain and it goes through certain thoughts, and this is currently what part of what it's processing, in which case still doesn't mean you're gay. The point is that don't resist thoughts like this. The only reason that we do is because we think that somehow it diminishes us or it threatens us. And the only reason it feels like that is because we were holding on to an idea of ourselves as being the best possible us that we could have been. Right? And that's where all that judgment comes from. That's where all that fear comes from. Right? It's really important to recognize that. You can find somebody of the same sex attractive. You can see things in them that are attractive. You can look at them and go, aha, those features. I like those features, and still not want to go and sleep with them. Because if you play it out in your head and you're just like, no, that's not what I'm looking at. See, right there. So don't suddenly get confused that just because you have a thought, it means something about you. I mean, you could think about killing someone. It doesn't make you a murderer, right? You could think about being on stage. It doesn't make you a performer. Because none of these thoughts actually define you. They're just thoughts. But resisting them, running from them, hiding from them, that's something that's going to just hound you and haunt you forever. Because then you're just like, what if it is? Oh my God, could it be? You're never going to know until you're actually in a situation where perhaps you do meet somebody you are attracted to, in which case you go, oh shit, I'm gay. And that's it. But I mean, if you're not in a situation, it hasn't happened, and you're just having thoughts, you don't have to continue thinking they mean anything about you. You can recognize that there is an infinite amount of perspectives in your brain. And there always will be. You're going to have thoughts about doing terrible, terrible things. You're not doing them, so that doesn't define you. They're just possible thoughts. And to limit yourself from those thoughts is to limit yourself from empathy.
Yeah, it's fascinating how any thought fluttering by, like, your brain is designed to confirm things that you look at and that you focus on. So anything, it could be a fleeting thought of like walking down the street and like maybe it's someone you don't even can't even tell, it's someone you can't really tell if they're male or female. And then it's like, oh, interesting. Yeah, find them kind of cute. And then you find out that they're male afterwards, and like you didn't even know in the moment. And then your mind just like runs. It's like, wait a second, does that mean? And then this, and then this, and then and it'll just go until you're like, imagining a life with someone that you're not even like really that attracted to or want to do something with, but it'll balloon anything, any thought. And the same goes for killing. Like I've had a fear of getting murdered, and it felt like it was a real thing that could happen for sure. Or killing someone. Like the thought of doing it can, if you focus on it, then can balloon in so many and that happens with so many of our just fleeting thoughts. Every thought has the potential to balloon. It's like they're all deflated balloons kind of floating by. It's like we fucking pick one, and then as we focus on it or like are worried about it, it's like we start, it starts inflating and it starts getting bigger. But that's always the case, and like it's like recognizing that that's what our brain does. Like it does that. Like anytime you do it, like that's going to be the response. That is the tool. Like your hand can grab onto your phone. Like your brain is going to do everything it can, dig into every potential, situation that you've ever experienced to try and confirm whatever is floating on by. But they're going to continue to float on by. And there's something else as you were talking about. I can't remember it, but it's our mind, powerful brain,
Oh God,
powerful
it's
tool.
incredible. We do have another question. This was from the last Q&A that we did in December. How have you known a romantic relationship was over before? Where's the line between working together to resolve any perceived issues and breaking up or redefining the relationship? So I'm not even going to attempt to get into this one. For anybody who doesn't know, my marriage ended 6 months ago or so. And so this is something that I actually discussed at length in season 5, episode 12. So if you want to go back and check out a long conversation about being honest and what relationships really are all about and why we hold on to them, the danger of the conceptual relationship and defining yourself according to its success and or failure and all of that fun perception, do go and check out that episode. I think you will find it very useful, and it comes from a place that, again, straight from the heart, something I'm going through, something I've went through recently. So I think you'll find more than a few perceptions that you may think are helpful in that episode.
Yeah, I think you cover everything really well in there, but it's like it's almost a tough thing as I'm trying to think about it in previous relationships I've been in. Like, it's not like there's these, markers necessarily that it's like, oh, well, if this happens, then this. It's like, again, similar to the words, it's like context. It's very, very important. And, there comes a point where, maybe in a certain situation you try for a bit and then you're like, no, maybe you try for a while and then like, no, but, and there, it takes a lot of self honesty too, to be like, all right, is this something that is within me? Is this an opportunity I could see to like let go of something or a perspective? And then as you do that, like, you start seeing similar responses no matter what you try or attempt. But, I can't tell you how many, attempts to have or whatever. So it's very much a person to person. And there's going to be less sensitivity to what's going on if you're looking around for someone to tell you, like, should I end this relationship now? Should I stay in this relationship now? It's like trading off your own ability to like make a well-informed decision by, it's not to say don't ask or whatever for someone else for their perspective, but there is going to be some sort of trade a lot of times with that. So.
Yeah, you want to talk about gray area relationships. It's about as gray area as it gets. I wanted to also mention that we have a relationships workshop. That is something where we spent actually more than one day going into this topic. It's in depth in the extreme, and it talks about dating as well. If you're out there and you're looking to connect with somebody, then we highly recommend that you stop trying to make that into something that you can measure your success by. Just get out there, do your own thing, love yourself, have a good experience, and ask yourself, if you weren't looking to attach to somebody, if you didn't think your life would be better through this person, would you be there with them? Would you be on that date? Would you be on that second date? If it wasn't for some promise of security or some promise that somebody is going to put you on a pedestal, if it wasn't for that egotistical drive or that egotistical payoff, would you be there eating that plate of lasagna with Phil?
No, Ray. No, I would not. They're great questions to ask and important questions to ask, because like so much of it, we don't ask those types of questions. Like, what do you mean? Someone giving me an egotistical high is the reason that I'm in this relationship right now. It's like there is a trade-off there. There's a double-edged sword that will come a knocking if you keep doing that. I have a couple more questions. What do we got? Yeah. Oh, this is a hit home for me for sure. How to overcome the fear of public speaking. Um, I think I like so much of this does just come down to doing it. I think like as much as you can shift perspectives, not take yourself as seriously, which is going to help in any sort of situation. Like it really does come down to doing it, because I think that for that, at least, in my experience, has been the wall in a sense of just like doing it. It's not even like how so, and like yeah, and that's even part of the reason I'm doing the run club is with that in mind, because like I'm gonna have to. I have no idea how many people are going to show up, and part of me is like, oh, I hope it's small to start out, but it's like whatever. It's jumping in to something, and so doing things that get you reps with that, and just because like a lot of it is having faith in yourself, and like you could like talking in a conversation with 5 people. That's a variation of public speaking. Going live on a social media platform, variation of public speaking. In our groups, free Wednesday groups, 6 p.m. every single Wednesday, variation of public speaking, and just putting yourself into those sort of Patreon groups every week, 5 days a week, free trial on tier 2. All of those are opportunities to do that. So, and they're all just variations of putting yourself out there. And there's a bunch of ways to do it, but it's very, I think, fairly common. I mean, they say it's what, like, second most common fear after death for a lot of people. So those are some of my thoughts.
Nice. Absolutely. I'll throw out karaoke. If you're really having problems with public speaking, get out to a karaoke bar, not one of those shitty ones where it's like private karaoke only, where you're with a bunch of people that you know. Go to an actual karaoke bar where it's a bunch of strangers. Listen to a few people go up. A couple of people are going to be awesome. A couple of people are going to go up, and they're not going to give a fuck if they're awesome. And you're going to respect those people more than anyone else, because that's why it's there. That person is giving you a microphone. That person is giving you a microphone, which means they're offering you the opportunity to use that microphone willingly. What right do you have to say no at the end of the day? Reality is asking you, come to the fore, present what you've got. And that's it. That's all you have to do. Present what you've got. Not what you wish you had, not what you think somebody else would have, but what you have right now. And then just keep doing that. And if it's not karaoke, it could be anything. Talk to the cashier at the grocery store. When the DoorDash guy comes to your door and say, "Hey man, how's your evening going?" That's a conversation. And the more conversation you have, the less you will have a fear of conversation. And the less you're afraid of conversation, the more you will start to want to speak as a whole. And then it'll get ridiculous to the point where you're talking to yourself when you're not talking to other people, because it's so much fun to be able to express yourself, because that's really all it's about. So if you're worried about public speaking, just get into speaking. That's really all it's about, because it's about you. And if it's about you, then at least you're interested in what you're saying. And the chances of somebody else showing some interest in what you're saying goes up astronomically, simply because you are invested in it. Because if you're not invested in it, why am I going to listen? And that is one of the first rules of salesmanship.
Well said. Yeah, it's a lot easier to talk about things you're passionate about. Like, I even remember, at my last job, like, having to give a talk or a training, and there were certain things that I'd just done enough that, like, wasn't even a second thought. There's just like, here, I'm going to walk you through this sort of thing. But it was way more fun and, like, easier to talk about something that I was interested in than something that I had to, like, force myself to learn and then talk about. And so being yourself, expressing yourself, talking about stuff that you're interested in is always going to be way easier than something that you're not as much. And so the more things you're interested in, like, the easier it's going to be to talk about just in general. And you've said this before, but, like, to be an interesting person, just be interested, and they kind of go very much hand in hand with how interested you are in reality, you know?
Fuck yeah. I mean, look at the fact that you came to my place, and I'm not boasting. Like, I don't live in a fucking mansion or anything. I live in a little 2-bedroom, half a house, and it's great. But I have little things where you're just like, that's very cool. Right? Because they're little things that make your life easier, little things that you would never thought of, little things that reflect an interest that maybe you didn't know I had. Stuff like that. You're just like, huh, that's very interesting. And I'm like, yeah, let me tell you about that shit, because I was interested in it. Like the fact that I own an acre on the moon that I bought at some point from somebody who figured out a loophole in the laws that govern the planetary bodies, because there was a treaty, international treaty, that was signed saying that no country or corporation can claim any of the planetary bodies, but it never said any individual. And so one person has decided to claim ownership, and he went around selling acres on the moon. Now, I get this is kind of a gag thing, because obviously it's never going to play out if the governments are like, no, like, we want that shit. It's never going to happen. But it was fun. And the reason it was fun is because I got to learn about all kinds of shit about the moon. It had some, like, mineral shit, and there were some maps about the different valleys and stuff. And it was just one of those things where I'm like, this is very interesting. And now I have an interesting thing to tell other people, because it was interesting to me. And I think it'll be interesting to you to know that at some point, somebody decided to claim all the planetary bodies and sell acres of them under the name the Big Cheese.
That is fucking unreal. I love that. And to your point, like if the government was like, yeah, no, like that would change so drastically quickly, and there would be very little ability to get in the way of that. And that kind of brings into question, like, how much do we have a sway over things? Like how much if the government wanted to do some shit, they just fucking start stomping. Like, yeah, we're gonna do this. And what the fuck are you gonna say about it? Well, that's not illegal, lawyer. It's like, all right, buddy. Good luck with that. But that's fun, and that's kind of like to my point before with what other podcasts would you recommend? Just something you're interested in, a topic you're interested in. There's lots of cool podcasts that only talk specifically about like one topic. Like get into a couple of those episodes, get into something that you're curious or wondering about because you don't know how things are going to play out, where it's going to go, what you're going to understand or learn, and like how much pressure I've noticed on myself just to like the feeling of finality with something that's being said as opposed to a component of a situation that's happening. And I've noticed this more just with people, or even I don't know, just in general, like just throwing something out there. Like I've had such an aversion to like kicking things off because it's faith in yourself to like, but it's faith in yourself combined with concern and fear and worry and all that stuff of like leading, like saying something that's just popped into your head and just talking about it. Cause it's like there's a sense of risk in that I'm noticing. Like I've always subdued in myself. And now I'm like starting to realize like, oh fuck yeah, no, I've done that. I've done that quite a bit throughout my life. And like I wasn't even aware of it until more recently, last month or two, but there has been that, and I've been doing it more in different situations, and it's like it's fascinating. I'm like, have I really never done this before? Have I really never, jumped in first with something? And I'm sure there's been points that I have, but like part of me is like, I don't know. Because there is the feeling of like, oh, that person responded, and now it's like stoked something or led to something else, or now you're talking about something else. And it's funny how, that can be a variation of being af- afraid, like being afraid of or thinking that, yeah, fuck, dude. It's like thinking you have control by just not doing, lack of action, thinking there's control in that because to do it, there's the sense of risk, but no action and action, like no action is an action in a sense. And it's just as much the ability to be looked at in a certain way. And I've said it so many times with like, I refer to it as growing up, and I'm like, oh, shit's still in there. Very much so. Like in high school, didn't want to be disliked. Didn't care if I was liked, but just didn't want to be disliked. And so how do you respond to that? You don't say anything. You be very quiet. And there's like, if I start talking about this too much, I'll get very emotional because it's like, it's one of the deepest sort of feelings that I've had. And there's variations of that just avoidance throughout my life. And I do it less than I used to for sure. But there's still some like deep roots in there that I'm just starting to like, all right, fuck it. Let's do this. Like keep maintaining some degree of like breath as we do it. But it's it's funny. I had no idea where that started from, but it's interesting for sure.
Public speaking. And actually, it ties into something that somebody had said. I have no problem with standing up and speaking in front of hundreds of people and done it many times, but smaller groups are so much harder for some reason. And it's because in large groups, it's almost equivalent to having no one, right? Because nobody is really ever looking at you for any long period of time. Like there's so many people around that there's very little weight on you except to just do your job and get the fuck out, right? And that's very easy. But in small groups, you see them looking at you, right? They're interacting with you. There's less people to manage, and so there's more capacity to judge yourself, right? And it just comes back down to that idea that you're going to perform in a way that is right or wrong. And this is something that I'm happy to say is the reason I just expect people not to like me. And the reason is simply because I try to be as authentic and honest and in the moment as I can. Right. And as such, I absolutely expect people who don't cherish those things to find me offensive. And then that's okay. See, that's the whole point. Is that what I'm saying is that not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's supposed to like you. Do you really want somebody who is judgmental to like you? Because for that to happen, you have to be judgmental yourself. Because if you're not, they won't like you. So is that really a trade you're willing to make? And if not, then you have to accept that not everybody's going to like you and they shouldn't.
Do you want someone who's judgmental to like you? Fuck. That's a good one to question and wonder about, because that's because to be someone who does judge you, you got to be judgmental. And so if it does happen, it's like that's the thing. It's like, within itself, it's like that's the thing that it has to be to do it. It's like, of course not. But then, oh, it's like fuck. and then it's always reflective of yourself. So then you got to sit with like, fuck, where am I still being judgmental of things? And when you're willing to sit with it and be like, not label yourself as like, oh, I'm not a judgmental person, you see where you are and you're left with where you are, but it requires you to let go of your fucking idea of yourself and all of the assumptions that you're making about yourself. Because as much as they bring us down, they also distract us. The things like, oh, I'm a good person, I'm a nice person, I'm a selfless person, I'm all these fucking things. It's like, why the fuck would you have to tell yourself that you're trying to make up for something? Why would you have to tell yourself that you were a good person, if not to distract yourself from all the ways that you're maybe not the best person?
Well, you see, that's just it, right? Like, how often do we lean on that? I'm a good person. Look at all the good things I do, just to balance out the thoughts that we fear make us bad people. Right? And that's often the case. Like, we have these thoughts, we're like, I must be a terrible person. I'm going to go out, I'm going to make it up to the world. You haven't done anything. Just because you had a thought about smacking somebody around at work doesn't mean you went and did it. It doesn't make you a bad person. It means you're a person. It means you have feelings and your brain's processing those feelings through imagination and all of this other fun stuff. It doesn't define you at all. But reacting to it, fearing it, is much more likely to make you the kind of person who's stressed out enough to smack that person at work.
Yeah, well said. And how much, oh my God, just like the immediacy of responses of like how tense you are, how seriously you're taking yourself. It's like there are actions that stem from that, but we think we're in control. So we think of just the action as opposed to where it's fucking rooted. And it's like, no, certain actions stem from certain assumptions and certain perceptions. Other actions stem from other assumptions, perceptions. Certain actions stem from certain states of being, on that spectrum of relaxation to tension. It's like, it would be funny to see a spectrum of like extreme relaxation to extreme tension, and like the typical responses to that. And like as you go, it's like there's certain responses that are further to one side or further to the other. Because even as you're putting like actions or something, again, like the words, it's contextual. So it's not going to be like, this action means that you are on from scale of this, you are at level 300 tension from that action. It's like, no, that action can stem from a variation, but it's a spectrum, and there's typical responses to being more relaxed in general versus more tense in general. And so if certain thoughts and experiences, quote unquote, lead to or cause, you to tense or relax, how much does relaxing first cause those experiences to shift and change? And so it's not to say that there's control. It's like, oh, as long as I stay relaxed, because you can't try to relax, you can't control the relaxation. It's the cessation of the belief in control, of the tension. But then there are different experiences. Like you may not experience so much anxiety, fear, worry, like self-doubt, self-deprecation if you're a little bit more relaxed. Like those are more things that are a response to being tense, which was a response to maybe something that happened. But you right now have the ability, even just in the slightest way to like relax a little bit more, maybe take yourself a little bit less seriously, maybe take your assumptions a little bit less seriously, and then it drops a little, and then there's different things that stem from that experience and that degree of relaxation. And so, how much influence do we have over ourself in a sense just by not feeling like we can be in that control or have that certainty and control?
And that state that we find ourselves in when we do that, when we recognize that, is love, is the reality of love. Because then it's just, here we are together, not get out of the way, I got shit to do. There's no judgment in it. We're just here together. And in that, we learn how to live together. We learn how to synchronize together. We learn how to align with one another. We learn what it is to be one. But we're never actually here together. We're in this fiction in our head. We're in this world of comparison and competition. And it makes it impossible for us to do anything except judge ourselves. Because, of course, we always need to be in control. We always need to be verifying that we know what's happening and we know what we're worth. Makes it impossible to feel love because we're not loving ourselves. Any other questions?
I have a few. We'll do. Yeah, some of these are strange. Okay, this is a good one. If absolute truth can't be communicated, then how do we know it exists?
Okay, well,
I mean,
you exist.
Yeah. I knew it was gonna be a short one, and that's why I was like, yeah, we can throw this under there because it's like it's not what you communicate, it's you. Can't be what what's communicated from. So yeah, that one's nice and quick, nice and easy.
I love the nature of that question. It's like, yeah, but it's not a concept, right? This is why I love the expression "what is," because you can't conceptualize it. It's reality. You can talk about little parts of it. You can talk about perceptions of it. You can divide it up, but that's not what is. You are what is. Without the illusion of you, you are what is in motion. Even with the illusion of you, you are what is in motion. You just can't appreciate it.
Exactly. That is the only other one that I got that makes. Well, all right. What is your process like to decide the amount of milligrams of edibles you will take? Uh, whatever I'm feeling, and that's kind of why I've tried a bunch of different uh, levels of it. And that was actually a thought I had before this, was because I was, during our last call, I was drinking one of those off-field drinks. Shout out off-field, Runners High. Great stuff. Shout out Tony, off-field founder, great dude. And he's been on an episode of Being High before, actually. But if you haven't checked them out, go for it, especially if you're getting into exercising high, just living high. But anyway, I was drinking it, and it's like 5 milligrams of THC. And I didn't really feel it as much as I have in the past. And I've heard people, talk about, oh, I need X amount dose to feel anything. And I wonder how much it's just like, the amount you smoke, the amount, say, for something like a gummy, because it is a measured dose, like it's dependent upon your state of relaxation. And so, like, if you're already there, it doesn't necessarily feel like as much of a jump, similar to how mushrooms, like a low dose won't, like, you'll feel it in a sense, but also like not so much because it's not as much of a jarring difference. Whereas, because now I can take, whereas, and it's kind of funny that I've made videos basically everywhere from 10 to 60 milligrams. And like when I took 20 milligrams, like the thought of taking 30 was like petrifying. And then I took 30 and it was kind of okay. And then to think that like I took 60 at one point after, whereas, and each time it's like, I don't know if I was that different, because it kind of went hand in hand with like me relaxing a little bit more, and just like even the willingness to do something like that, like to jump into that. Because as I've said before, like I had some really brutal like gummy experiences, and it was like the thought of edibles was like, I'm not gonna say biggest fear, but like it was something that I was, if someone was like, here's an edible, I'd be like, fuck no chance I'm going back into that. But it was just showing, where I was at. And so anyway, deciding how much to take, just kind of how I'm feeling. I am gonna do, I think, when I'm back in New York, a 70 episode 7 at some point. So that should be fun, because 60 was a fucking ride and a half, which is on our Duelist Unity YouTube, by the way. I didn't put that on social media.
That is awesome. This has been fun. I've really enjoyed this episode. I wanted to say thank you to everyone who could join us. This is actually going to be an episode in season 6. This is episode 9. I believe it should be out next week. Of course, we're going to edit it up, record an intro for this shortly after the fact. But we appreciate you being here, and we will see you on Tuesday. Tomorrow, we have a live call-in show. So if you're here right now, definitely come back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern time, when you can call in and be on the episode for up to 10 minutes.
Fuck yeah, it's been a blast. I forgot for a while that this was live stream, because I don't see the numbers from my side in the same way. But appreciate everyone for tuning in. Appreciate all the questions, some awesome questions, and look forward to chatting with you tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.